Good morning. Glad you can join us. Michael is a professor at San Jose City College, where I taught for many years. Thank you for joining, Michael. So we
Thank
have
you
Father Sebastian, we have Dr. Fevzullah from Nigeria, and we have Jim McParvel from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and myself. So this this session is meant to be more interactive than the previous two sessions. I'll let Father Sebastian kind of summarize a bit, if that's okay, Father Sebastian, since you said this would be more interactive, but we have, this is going to be, it is being recorded. So we'll be able to
Yes.
then share it with other people. So do you want to just give a brief summary, Father Sebastian, of what we've been talking about on the parables and their implications for social justice?
Okay. Thank you, Gerard. Exactly. I'm going to give a summary of what we did the last 2 weeks. So first of all, we began by somehow having a look at the concept, the word parables. And we said briefly that parables comes from a Greek word which means to put besides. That means to put beside something, a concept that is to put an idea beside another. So the purpose of parables, so we said that the first the purpose of a parable is to conceal. So Jesus' main parable were made to conceal the truth from those whose heart were already prejudiced. So the second purpose of parables were to reveal the truth to his those who were close to him, the disciples mainly. The third purpose was to appeal to to the hearers' sense of justice before they realize that the parable applied to them. They would have received the message. The fourth purpose was a kind of preservation of the truth, to preserve the truth. Then we said also that the parables were kind of elicitation. The theme of the parables were generally the kingdom of heaven, but we had a we have sub team like the character of the kingdom, the character of the king, like in the parable of the worker in the vineyard, the character of the king's subject. So we also said somehow we looked at how to interpret parables, and we said that parables, there's something that we needed to avoid the extremes. That means seeking to find some spiritual truth in every little detail. And the other hand was saying that there is only one spiritual truth in the parable. So some guidance for interpretation of parables. Learn from the explanation that Jesus gave himself. Look for the central truth of the parable. Consider carefully the context of Jesus' word, and don't use the parable to formulate a new doctrine. So the number of the parables, we say that there is something like 40 parables, but we agreed that we should look at like 20 to 30 parables. So we gave a two chart of classification of parables. So last week, that was the first week. And last week, we saw how the world financial and the economic system failed in the global south. We spoke about the Bretton Woods institutions that were World Bank and International Monetary Fund, to say that those institutions that were created after Second World War was made to support the reconstruction of European countries, mostly sustained or financed by United States. But after that, independence came in many colonized countries. Those institutions, the Bretton Woods institution, turned towards those the so-called developing countries to somehow impose on them their policies, which revealed themselves to be a great failure. So there is the constatation that we made is that the policies of those institutions really failed to respond to the appeal that was made by developing countries to help them. Now, we were supposed then to talk about a crisis today, to discuss about crisis, and say that economic and financial crisis are somehow what we look at today. So if we take the main crisis, like, first of all, to talk about what is a crisis, a financial crisis. A financial crisis happens when financial instruments and assets decrease significantly in value. As a result, businesses have troubles meeting their financial obligation, and financial institutions lack sufficient cash or convertible assets to fund projects and meet immediate need. Investors lose confidence in their value or in the value of their assets, and consumer incomes and assets are compromised, making it difficult for them to pay their debt. So that's somehow a brief summary of what we did. First of all, we spoke about parables. Then we somehow looked at the Bretton Woods institutions, why they were created, and how they turned towards global South countries, the policies that they applied to save those countries' financial and economic systems that were somehow in trouble. The policies that they did apply really failed because of the fact that they did not really focus on the people they were serving, but they tried to implement policies that mostly United States and Great Britain somehow tried to impose on them. So today, talking about financial and economic crisis, we are what we can say is that those crises are somehow the result of the failure of a particular system. What are the stages of those crises? They begin with the launch of the crisis. Financial system fail, generally caused by the systems and regulatory failure, institutional mismanagement of finances, and more. The next stage involves the breakdown of the financial system, with financial institution, businesses, and consumers unable to meet obligation. Finally, asset decrease in value, and the overall level of debt increases. So we have the example of tulip mania crisis of 1637, the credit crisis of 1772, the stock crash of 1929, the OPEC crisis of 73, then Asian crisis of 1998, which we spoke about last week. Then the most famous of them, the 2008 global financial crisis, then the COVID-19 pandemic crisis that happened recently. So the most difficult, I mean, the tough, the most difficult of those crises has been the 2008 global financial crisis. So what we are saying, and how do we relate those elements with the parables? We are saying that, as we said, parables are somehow connecting realities that are happening in order to correct them, to connect them with a story that is somehow unreal, but which brings in element of our everydays, living and experiences. So what is happening now is that the world financial system showed its limitation. The crisis happened to remind us that we need to pay attention to those institutions, the way they function, the way they are organized, in order for us to reshape them. How do we do it? From the biblical background, going through those parables. So taking parables, then we are drawing from the parables lessons that we can, apply on our economic and financial system today. So that is basically what we said. And the key element that we use to connect those parables is that there is a moral lesson in all of those parables. There is a critical thinking that by which we present scenarios that require interpretation. Parable encourage then that critical thinking. They invite individuals to explore their values and beliefs about wealth, investment, success, fostering a more thoughtful approach to financial choices, visualization of consequences, community, and dialogue. So those are the four elements that can allow us to relate, parables with the financial situation that we are in today. So I don't know, Gerald, if we are together. I try to summarize what we have done so far.
I think that's a good summary. I think what we're going to do now is ask Dr. Fevzullah to provide an Islamic perspective on the ethics that you presented, since he's working in the Islamic philosophy area, and he's in Nigeria. Okay. Nigeria is a very large country in Africa that's, I'm sure, affected by, I was just there a few weeks ago visiting with him, and we know that the US aid pulled out almost $200 million in financing for Nigeria with the closing up of the US Agency for International Development. So this has a direct impact on the country. So I asked Dr. Fevzullah Bilgin to comment. We have the Father Sebastian, you give us a very good picture of the Jesus's parables and that perspective on international finance. So I asked Dr. Fevzullah to present his perspective also. Would you want to do that now, Dr. Fevzullah?
Sure. Thank you very much, Professor Gerald. Of course, I would like to talk about the perspective from the Islam as a religion on the social and financial justice as a result of this 19th session and summary on the biblical parables by Father Sebastian. So,
hello.
Religion. Yeah?
Yeah, hello, I'm getting you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm getting you.
All right.
Okay.
Can I continue?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Sure. All right. Religious traditions, including Christianity and Islam, have long emphasized justice as a fundamental pillar of society. The teachings of Jesus Christ on stewardship, fairness, and compassion align closely with Islamic principles, which provides a comprehensive ethical framework for financial and social justice. Justice is a core value in Islam. The Quran explicitly commands fairness and integrity in all aspects of life. The Quran says, in Quran, God Almighty says, chapter 16 to 9.90, indeed, Allah commands justice, good conduct, and giving to relatives, and forbids immorality, bad conduct, and oppression. So justice is not just a recommendation, but it's a divine obligation that ensures balance in society. It extends beyond personal character to economic and social structures, advocating for fairness in trade, finance, and governance. Similar to the parables of Jesus that highlight the importance of the responsible stewardship, Islam also upholds the principles of trustworthiness in financial matters. Ethical conduct in business is not only encouraged but also mandated by divine instruction in Islam. The Quran says in chapter 2.282, "O you who have believed, when you contract a debt for a specified term, write it down. And in another chapter, God Almighty says, chapter 5.1, "O you who believed, fulfill all contracts." So as you see, these verses emphasize accountability in financial agreements, ensuring that economic transactions are based on honesty and transparency. And in a similar way, trade and commerce are also essential parts of human civilization. And Islam, too, ensures that they operate within ethical boundaries. The Quran strongly discourages unjust financial practices such as fraud, coercion, and exploitation. In Quran, chapter 4.29, God Almighty says, "Do not consume on another's wealth unjustly, but only in lawful business by mutual consent." And the next chapter I would like to say is very much related with what is happening, the problems and challenges in Nigeria, especially. So Quran in chapter 2.188 says, "Do not consume on another's wealth unjustly, nor deliberately bribe authorities in order to devour a portion of others' property, knowing that it's a sin." So I don't know in the other African countries, but in Nigeria, I have been here in Nigeria for 15 years, and I believe it's not only in Nigeria, in many other countries. Corruption is one of the basic problems that we are encountering. It affects social justice, it affects the education institutions, health institutions, it affects justice in general in the courthouses everywhere. As a result, all the projects or the financial resources, they're just drained, and it doesn't really give the benefits that it is supposed to. And so bribery, corruption, and unethical financial gains are condemned in Islam because they lead to social disparity and economic injustice. And also, Quran stresses fairness in trade by warning against deceitful business practices. I have also a chapter from Quran 26.181 to 183. God Almighty says, "Give full measure and weight in justice. Do not deprive people of their due, and do not commit abuse on earth, spreading corruption." So this principle resonates with the moral teachings found in biblical parables, urging individuals to uphold integrity, fairness, and financial dealings. And I also would like to say a little bit about the financial systems, what Islam is saying about the opposition to the exploitative financial systems. Islam takes a firm stance against economic structures that favor the wealthy at the expense of the poor. So the practice of interest and usury is explicitly prohibited in Islam because it creates financial imbalances and widens the gap between the rich and the poor. And in Quran, for example, this one is highlighted in chapter 2, 275. Allah has permitted trade and has forbidden interest. God says, and Islamic finance, therefore, promotes profit sharing and ethical investment models, ensuring that wealth circulation benefits all members of society rather than a privileged few. And I would like to say one or two things more about the wealth distribution and social responsibility. In Islam, social justice goes beyond economic fairness. It also requires an active redistribution of wealth to uplift those in need. The principles of zakat, it's a term in Islam which means obligatory charity, and sadaqah, which means voluntary charity. And these things, these two principles ensure that the resources are allocated to support the underprivileged. In Quran again, chapter 9.60, God Almighty says, Zakat, which is the obligatory charity, are only for the poor and for the needy as an obligation imposed by Allah. So these charitable practices reflect Christian teachings on generosity, compassion, reinforcing the shared moral vision of both faiths. And lastly, I would like to say something about the social justice on the financial means. Beyond the individual ethics, Islam also provides structural mechanisms to sustain social and financial justice. I also already mentioned one of them, which is the stance against the interest, in which Islam is encouraging Islamic banking and finance, which is supposed to remove interest-based exploitation, and it promotes fair profit sharing. And secondly, Islam also promotes endowments, which is waqf, which refers to the funds by the government for the social welfare projects, education, and healthcare for the long-term societal benefits. And lastly, Islam encourages fair trade policies, encourages businesses to operate transparently and ethically. So, in short, I would like to say that the principles of Islamic ethics on social and financial justice align with many of the values found in the teachings of Jesus. Islam calls for fairness in trade, honesty in financial dealings, and it also encourages the protection of the vulnerable through wealth redistribution. So by practicing these values, individuals and societies can build an economy rooted in equity and compassion to ensure that justice is not only an abstract ideal, but a lived reality. Thank you very much all for your time. I just wanted to summarize in a short time, and I look forward to more discussions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fevzullah. Maybe we could ask other participants like Michael Davinia. Did you have any comments, Michael?
Well, I'm interested in looking at how parables can inform our action and our thinking with regard to social justice and economic justice. When you mentioned that the U.S. pulled away 200 million from Nigeria recently, I would like to know more about that. Why and what happened and what was the purpose of the money? What's the effect of pulling that money?
Well, the U.S. Institute for International Development was one of the largest providers of financial aid for vulnerable people in Africa. And that has been completely shut down by the Trump administration. And as a result, many of the programs that it funded, particularly those that reach vulnerable people in healthcare, in food programs, in education for the poor, women's health, maternal health, all of these programs got just immediately cut out. Maybe you could, are you aware of that, Father Sebastian, some of the U.S. Institute?
I'm aware of that. Yes. Hello, are you getting me?
Yeah. So this has been had a huge impact in the global South because they depended upon many of these programs for the most vulnerable people. So this is the situation we're facing right now. Incidentally, one of the things we're doing with Global Ministries University, we're starting to produce books on some of these issues. We just came out with a book on Fratelli Tutti yesterday. It's on Amazon, has my name on it. It's on our 2023 global conference on Fratelli Tutti. That's Pope Francis's document on how do we create a more fraternal world order for everybody, particularly for those who are most vulnerable, as both Islam and Christianity bring out. So I'm hoping that perhaps out of this dialogue that we just started of Christianity and Islam, perhaps Father Sebastian and Fevzullah might help us to produce a book on these issues from a Christian and Muslim perspective of what's happening in international finance. So if you're willing to
Sure,
do
sure.
that, we're willing to publish the book as a Kindle book. We just published it yesterday, the book on Fratelli Tutti, which just came out yesterday. So we have the expertise now to do these Kindle publications. So I thought this would be a
Okay.
very worthwhile project from a Christian and Muslim perspective, looking at the
Yeah,
international financial system and how do we
exactly.
correct the injustices that are in the world today and bring these two
Uh-huh.
great religions to bear on the international situation we're facing. Because unfortunately, going back to Machiavelli in the 16th century, up until the 16th century, Christianity and Islam both promoted a social justice understanding of political systems. Beginning with Machiavelli, you have beginning of what we call power politics. Who has the power controls the money. So
Yeah,
the modern world has developed, unfortunately, from a capitalistic perspective of whoever has the most money. We've seen that with
yeah.
Mr. Musk, who's the most richest person in the world, trying to control the whole American political
Yeah.
system. Go ahead.
Hello, Gerard. Hello.
So I'm hoping that this could be the start of a dialogue that we can produce a publication on this
Yeah,
situation.
exactly. And can I?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Gerard. Exactly. I wanted to bounce on what you are saying and to connect with what Doctor said a couple of minutes ago. There is a dimension that goes beyond what the system is proposing right now. You know, right now, what we do have is somehow a kind of giving to anybody what he deserves, not what he needs, and at the level that he needs it. Connecting it to what Gerard has just said, that aid that has been suspended on the basis of let us evaluate how that aid is somehow being used, though many people are suffering from the suspension of that aid. For instance, in South Africa, there's another case in South Africa. US aid was helping people who are living with HIV/A virus to somehow get free drugs and medicine, what we call antiretroviral, for their cure. So everything has been, suspended right now. But now, when we look what the doctor said, and which we also find in Christianity, is that we need to give not regarding on an equal basis. What do we gain? What how much do we spend? But what do they need? And how do they need it? And I can connect it with the parable of the what we call the parable of the employee of the seventh hour. At the end, that parable says, there's this landowner who went to the marketplace at the first hour and got some employees. So he agreed with them to pay them 1 denarii for the labor day. So he went 3 hours later. He recruited new employees. The fifth hour, then the seventh hour, he recruited another group of employees who worked just 1 hour, but he paid them the same amount of 1 denarii for the full day work. At the end of that parable, the moral of the story is that don't I have the right to do with what belongs to me, to use it the way I want? He used it regarding the necessity, because when he spoke to those workers he recruited at the last hour, he told them, "Why did you remain here the whole day long without working?" So they said, "We have been here, master, but nobody hired us." So it doesn't mean that they have been idling. No, they have been searching, looking for it. But at the end of the day, what is the important here is to see that the owner of the wealth is using it not regarding the scientific basics, or justice give something equal to everybody, but he noticed that those ones needed it more than any other worker. So it calls us to generosity, to link it to what Gerard said, and the cutting of US aid all over the world. So it is not just about let us cut it. No, but the impact. Which impact does that have on people who are benefiting from it? So cutting it is making a huge damage to those populations who have been, benefiting from that aid. Apart from that, some local government, as doctor said, so some local government are so corrupted that they do not initiate or they cannot really support those kinds of policies that are really helping people on the ground, on the floor. So what they do is just to try to make some money for themselves, and then they just go blind about the real problem that is on the ground. So I don't know, that was my point of view. Maybe Dr. Fevzullah may add some few points on that.
Sure. I would like to just say that, the global economic structure, which is based on the capitalist perspective, really emphasizes the survival of the fittest. And as a result, it does not like solely based on that, but it is one of the main principles. And as a result, a lot of people in needy are the ones suffering from. The poor are the people who are not really having the hope for future. And as a result, this is really rich people get richer, poor people get poorer. So when you have the money, you are more powerful. So this economic system is not really favoring from a merciful point of view, especially. And I think the global powerful structures and organizations should consider the whole structure from the point of view that Islam and Christianity are providing, which is based on the values and protecting the needy and the vulnerable. So that's something really important. Nigeria, in this regard, is a very interesting country. Probably many other African countries are also similar in terms of that. There are a lot of ethnic groups, like 500 ethnic groups exist in Nigeria right now, and Christians and Muslims, they live together. Like around 50% of Nigeria is Muslims, and the other half is like Christians. And there are a lot of people, because Christians and Muslims live in the same neighborhood. And when there is economic crisis, when there is starvation, when there is problems, economic problems, and we have been enduring a lot of economic challenges recently, especially after the COVID-19. And regardless of whether people are from this ethnicity or that ethnicity, or from this religion or that religion, so everyone is equally suffering from these economic problems. And the removal of the US aid by US government is going to definitely have a tremendous negative impact on this social, educational, health issues, matters. So probably a lot of people benefited from these aids. And on the top of the economic problems, and the removal of the USA is going to be an issue, definitely. And I think we should be more working hand in hand, like people from different countries, different religions, different ethnicities, so to address the problems together. And I think, as the Professor Gerard has suggested, a book from both perspectives, Islam and Christianity, on the social justice is going to be a great step towards that. And I would be happy to contribute to the book, Professor, myself, from my point of view.
Wonderful. Well, as I said, we have the capacity now. GMU has the technical ability to produce these books very quickly on Kindle. As I said, we just produced one yesterday, which was the results of our Fratelli Tutti conference. So hopefully, Father Sebastian and Professor Fevzullah, if you're willing to work, I think you have a lot of the material already done on the parables, Father Sebastian.
Yeah.
So if you can produce
Exactly.
that as a document, as a Word document, and then Professor Fevzullah, if you could produce what you presented as, you know, on the Islamic perspective on this. And then also, I don't know if my friend Michael, you'd be willing to contribute to such a book because you have a good background in mathematics, because a lot of this comes down to the math part. In other words, where is the money going in the world? The capitalist system is basically controlling the flow of money to who gets the money. We know Mr. Musk is the richest man in the world. Why is it that one person has multiple billions of dollars and the rest of the world has next to nothing? You know, where's the math of all this, and who controls the way the money flows? It's just it's an unethical system we have right now. And
there are some alternative sources like the UN, the Gates Foundation. You know, there's other sources that aren't governmental sources, but other sources of aid and philanthropy that can be brought to where it's needed.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we want to produce this book because I think for the future of Africa, particularly, my thesis, we've been talking with some of the tech companies here in the San Jose area, like Google and ChatGPT. Most of the money now is flowing into AI. So the future of the world is going to be very much bound up with AI. So this book that we would produce also has to bring in something on the role of AI in ethics, because AI is, most of the investment now is going into AI. So how does that benefit the developing world? We need to look at that as well in this book. So
Yeah.
AI is going to be the driver of a lot of funding going forward, not so much from the government, from the private sector. So even though the government is maybe perhaps like Google, for example, is investing $1 billion in Nigeria as we sit right now. They've committed $1 billion for Nigeria. And they've said they want to train people in Nigeria. Well, that's a whole source of funding that maybe we need to look at for the future of countries like Nigeria. Maybe the governmental sector may not be available, at least during the Trump era, but maybe other sources of funding can be utilized for community development and economic development. And that's, hopefully we can include some of that in this book. How do we move forward, particularly with AI? AI is going to be a major driver for the future of these countries. Would you agree with that, Father Sebastian and Fevzullah?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Gerard. I do agree with you. And what I said regarding parables, there is another element that comes up when we read parables, and this element related to what you are just saying, Gerard, about AI is this: that if we take the parable of the sower who plants seeds in every kind of soil that are rocky, soil that has along the way, and the good soil. The moral lesson is this: that let us not make of a sector or an area something that is privileged compared to others. All the soil needs to be, utilized where seed needs to be planted. So what is being done now with a lot of investment that is made on AI is like, depriving the other soil from benefiting from the huge amount of money that is, going all over the world now. So I talk under the supervision of Michael. Allow me. So we need to take into account all the areas we have. For instance, in developing countries, areas that are still in need of huge investment. I'm talking about health issue. I do remember reading newspaper 2 weeks ago. Here in Cameroon, there are still babies who are dying because of lack of what you call in French couveuse. Those babies who are born ahead of time, so they need to be put in those machines. I forgot how they call it in English. So we call it in French couveuse. So those who are born ahead of time. So we are still in need of such basic health infrastructures. But when you see the huge amount of money that is put in AI, you are asking yourself, actually, where are the priorities? It is true that with the development of AI, there are many, many domains that will be somehow revolutionized. Science is making a huge step in the future with AI, but let us not forget other domains that are not really, so much developed in some other parts of the world. So that is what I think. So when we go into the parables, one of the lessons that comes up from those parables is that all the domain should be somehow, boosted, kept and nurtured, matured, and not to privilege one, and the others ones are somehow, put aside. So there are so many other domains. To summarize myself, there are so many other domains in developing countries that still need a huge investment. Roads, for instance, running water, energy. There are so many domains, but let us not just flow all the investment, all the money that is available into just one sector, forgetting that there are other basic sectors that are still in need of promotion. So that's it. So that's one of the lessons that we get from the parables. So let us promote all together, and not let somebody along the road.
Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon, he's taken his wealth and said he's investing $20 billion into ecological projects, a lot of them in Africa. So that's an example of the private sector taking some of their profits and reinvesting it into social good. So that type of investment is very important for the future of Africa and developing countries. So hopefully more and more people like the Gates Foundation and so on. I haven't seen enough of that to make a real difference, but it maybe if this book that we're talking about emphasizes the idea that both Christianity and Islam require, from an ethical perspective, this kind of, you can't take the money with you when you die. First of all, if you amass wealth, you don't take it into your grave. You have to put it to some good. So if these big corporate sectors, which control so much, particularly the technology sector, now controls probably a good amount, almost as much money as a nation state. Could that be put to better use by requiring people to? One of the questions going on in the United States right now is, should you require people to give away a certain amount of their money when they die to some good use, and not try to pass it on to their children? So big family foundations now control billions and billions of dollars in the world. And this is not really ethical, according to my understanding of both Christianity and Islam, that you just keep amassing wealth among a small group of people. So these are questions that need to be raised. And I think Christianity and Islam have a good ethical foundation for doing this. So let's have here We have a Jim, do you want to comment?
Thank you very much. First of all, I feel very privileged to be part of this discussion. I have been just thinking here as I'm listening. I have something that troubles me greatly is there is almost an equal amount of references in both the Hebrew and the New Testament to aid for the widows, orphans, and strangers versus aid to the widows and orphans, period. And I think this is like a major problem of understanding, and it leads people to very different conclusions about what they can do with wealth. And I heard Dr. Fevzullah make a reference about giving to relatives, and I don't think that is exclusive to Islam by any means. But the policies that we were talking about Bretton Woods, I think the inadequacies of those policies compared to what is going on right now in the change of government in the United States is almost makes Bretton Woods look good by comparison. I think we are in for a very, very dangerous time. I appreciate your concerns and your strategy. Look forward to your books. This is tremendous. But I wanted to call to your attention when you talk about AI investments in Africa. The expose that 60 Minutes did about the abusive sweatshop practices AI was employing in investments in Africa caused me a lot of alarm about how we're going to be able to manage this. I mean, so I'm sorry, these are my comments. I'm just very pleased to be able to sit back and listen.
Well, that's the reason why we need the ethical perspective, because unfortunately, sweatshop practices are throughout the world right now in many of these countries, where they take the most vulnerable people and who just need to scrape by. So the big corporations take advantage of that, and they subcontract with different countries to produce different things at a fraction of the cost it would be in the United States or in Europe. So the ethical perspective is what often is lacking. And how do you require that ethics to be in place at all levels of the economic system? Because what happens is, as you go down the line, the economic system obviously is a global system. We're not going to do away with the globalization of economics, I don't think, so it is a global system, but it has to be monitored ethically by some group of people, and that's not happening right now. The UN has tried to do that. The question came about migration is another area. There's a global compact on migration, which unfortunately the United States never signed. So the flow of people from one nation to another is another aspect of ethics. Why should this be controlled just by one big country or two countries? Who gets in, who doesn't get in? Like Europe and the United States, most people are trying to either get into Europe or into the United States, coming from poor countries. So you have a flow of people as well as money. You have a people flowing. So our last conference that GMU did in 2025 was on the migration issue. How do you have a just migration system for the world? And there's a global compact on migration, which has been negotiated, and some countries have signed it, others have not. The US has not signed that compact. So these are other issues that need to be addressed ethically. And I know, Dr. Fevzullah, you're working on ethics for some of the classes you hope to teach for us. These are some of the issues that we hope can be brought up in these classes. How do we have a just migration system as well as a just economic system? And these are all important issues the world is facing today.
There's a lot of
I don't know
levels.
pardon?
I was going to say there's a lot of levels that those issues have to be addressed. For instance, if Google gives $1 billion to Nigeria, that money has to be determined how that money is going to be spent, and to avoid corruption along the way.
Yeah, well, that's
so
I don't know if you knew that, Dr. Fevzullah, that Google has committed $1 billion for Nigeria. So who's going to determine how that money is spent? You know,
Well,
I would think the government's going to have a role in that, but the private sector and the nonprofit, you're in the education sector. So it's very important. They said Google wants to train people to be technically literate in AI. So that's going to be another whole area where your organization will perhaps get some of that funds to train people. But I don't know if you're even aware of that $1 billion investment that Google is making.
well, I was not very much aware when you were here in Nigeria. You mentioned about it, so I just became aware of it then.
Yeah.
Well, I think the spending of this amount of money in Nigeria is going to be a very serious issue, and I have concerns, like Mr. Michael mentioned. So it is a very widespread issue, like a lot of funds, like charity and then help, aids, they come to Nigeria, and a lot of these resources, unfortunately, they have been abused, and a lot of money has just been spent for nothing. There are a lot of people, a lot of organizations who seemingly collect the money and show one or two things, like in the name of helping people, and then they corrupt and abuse a lot of these resources. So that is something that is supposed to be considered very carefully. And I have an experience, you know, in Nigeria. So I'm a managing director of the group of schools. So Professor Gerard knows it. So for that one, I was thinking about, helping a hand in the society outreach programs. So we try to apply some of the international aids, and unfortunately we were not able to get anything because people are so careful. The international organizations which provide these kind of funds, they're so concerned and they're so careful because they have bad experiences about the corruption of the funds for international aids. So what I have realized at the end of this experience is that most of the international organizations about these funds and then aids, they're working with the governmental organizations because they are not really trusting on these private organizations most of the times. And we approach the organizations from the government to work together. So it didn't work out at the end, but it is something that needs really great attention. And secondly, in terms of AI, I think it is a very critical thing in terms of ethics, because AI is about producing, creating knowledge, as well as controlling and dissemination of the knowledge, information. So whoever is going to control AI in the future is going to be controlling knowledge and production and dissemination of knowledge. And as a result, so it is prone to manipulations of the people, opinions of the people, manipulations of knowledge, the resources. So like George Orwell's 1984, everything can be erased and reproduced and changed. So that is something that we need to work as humanity very carefully to develop ethical principles to control and guide AIs. Otherwise, it can be a big weapon that can destroy humanity in the future.
Yeah. I hope you can include some of that in the book we're talking about, the ethics of AI. That would be an important element because that's going to be a driver in the future, and it needs ethical foundation, how it's going to be disseminated. My wife and I went to Costa Rica last year for a conference on international online education. And we had people from, a lot of people were there from Africa as well, particularly from South Africa. And there were some professors there from Silicon Valley who developed something called Tutor Pro, which is an interactive tutorial system for education, which actually will teach you any subject from kindergarten through PhD online and it actually is interactive. So you ask it questions, it asks you questions back and forth. It's called Tutor Pro. So this is an example of AI in education, which could be very beneficial for the developing world because, you know, a lot of students don't have access easily to a tutor. So if they can have access on their smartphone or on their computer to a tutor that will help them, say mathematics, to tutor them in math, it can be very beneficial. But these systems need to be made available to the developing world. When I was meeting with an official of ChatGPT recently, we had a meeting, and he said, well, ChatGPT might be willing to provide this kind of service to low-income countries like Nigeria free. This could be very beneficial to have tutorial programs that children could master different subject areas much more quickly. Doesn't mean you don't need a teacher. You still would need a teacher. But if it has a lot of this material already available through AI, it could be very beneficial to low-income people, and they could learn much more quickly. So how do we bring, like from my experience in Nigeria, many of the 40% of the people are under 40 years of age, and a lot of them are low income. I think something like 70% are low income. Right. So how do we bring 70% of the population up in education? Well, AI could possibly be very helpful for that by developing tutorial systems to complement the formal system. So these are examples of how AI might be very useful for developing countries to bring the more young people higher levels of education, because without education in the modern world, it's very difficult to advance your nation. Absolutely. And that's why I was very impressed with the educational programs that Dr. Fevzullah's group is doing. You have very high level educational programs there in Nigeria. If those could be expanded even further into the areas where there's lacking these services, I think that could be very beneficial.
I was going to say, I think that you got to be careful with AI. They talk about bias, and whatever information AI is fed leads to a culture or other kinds of bias. So if you put a Western trained AI into another culture, there could be issues. So depends on what AI has been fed as to what it processes. It only uses all the data and information that's fed.
Well, isn't that a reason why there has to be a broader engagement, not just the Silicon Valley companies? Because if it's just Silicon Valley, it's going to have a Silicon Valley bias. So that's why we need to have a more global perspective on AI with the ethics and involve, Google has already said they're going to invest $1 billion. Well, who's going to control that money? Who is going to benefit from it? Those are all questions that need to be, negotiated. And unfortunately, I think it's all being done at the top now. The people at the bottom have no say. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah. Hello, Gerard?
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, exactly. That's the point I wanted to make, saying that, and I come back to Michael's intervention a couple of minutes ago when he asked who will manage those funds. And here, if we go back to, allow me to go back to the parables each and every time. If we go back to the parables, when this one of the sub-team of the parable, the main theme being the kingdom of God. One of the sub-theme is the character of the subject of the king in those parables. So one of the lessons that the subject of the king are invited to learn is this, that we are only managers. So no matter the volume, the amount of wealth that somebody has, we are only managers. As Gerard said a couple of minutes ago, nobody will take all that money along with him in the tomb. Nobody, it has never been seen. So the point now is getting that lesson from the parables. How do we then help those who are designing policies, those who are implementing them, those who are trying to lead us into new technologies and the new development area, how to make them understand that those policies are there not to serve some private interest, but to help the whole humanity to grow together, because that is the point that we might be missing if we miss the point of working hand in hand with people there in Silicon Valley or high there, as Gerald just said a couple of minutes ago, those who are designing those policies, to make them, to respond to the needs of all and not only to serve a particular policy. And I think that's the point Jim made a couple of minutes ago. So how do we build something that serves all of us together? And then I come back to the parables. When we look at the sub theme of the character, the subject, the king's subject, we are invited to understand that we are only managers who are working for a master who has entrusted to us those elements in order for us to build a better world, a better humanity. So that's the point that I wanted to make, that right there, once again, we can read in the parables the point of our management. How do we manage our health? How do we manage the new concept, the new sciences, new technologies that are coming up, especially AI, which is actually the thing which is, somehow draining a lot of money.
Yeah. One thing we discussed while I was in Nigeria was the possibility of a dialogue between key people in Nigeria and Silicon Valley. Now, I don't know if we can do that in person, but at least we could do it in terms of Zoom, having an educational program for some of the leaders in Silicon Valley that are creating AI. One of the persons I met recently is creating AI for Google. So we have contacts with these people here in Silicon Valley. And I mentioned we have a connection with ChatGPT. So I think we could bring together some of these people, even if we did it as a Zoom conference first, let's say in the next, so bring together people who are creating the new technology with the people in the developing world, like Nigeria or Kenya, where you have a conference in dialogue between the developing and the developers of the new technology. This may be a way we can create a new platform with that.
Yeah.
We need a new platform. We don't have the platform yet that really integrates the needs of the developing world and these developers of the AI technology. So I think that dialogue needs to happen if we're going to make progress. And I think this little group we have here today could be a starting point. And we're going to meet the mayor of San Jose next week, which Michael is arranging for that. So we're hoping that the mayor of San Jose will get behind this effort, because San Jose likes to think of itself as the capital of Silicon Valley. We have a lot of the big tech companies here. So we're hoping there can be a partnership formed between Silicon Valley and Africa.
Yeah.
Because Africa is going to be a big part of the future of the world. That's where the growing population base is. And also for religion and science, Africa is still a very religious area of the world. The West is largely secularized now. Money is the religion of the West, unfortunately, and
That's right.
control. But religion is still a vital force in Africa. So I think if Africa can bring together the ethical dimension for the future of humanity, Africa can really lead the way for the world in some ways, I think, because it still retains a strong spiritual foundation for its culture, whereas the West has lost a lot of that.
Yeah. Gerard,
Yeah,
sorry, can
go
I
ahead.
make a point, please? And that is where I think our role as people who are helping thinker to build something that is made on a basis of serving humanity, serving people.
Right.
That is where we should play a key role, because the trait, the greatest trait actually here in Africa, and Dr. Fevzullah might share my point of view. The greatest trait that we have actually in Africa here is just to copy the Western model of development and to paste it in Africa. So if we go on that line, if we follow that scheme, we will just go, straight on the wall. We need now to shape something that will help Africa to keep its traditional, its religious, its cultural background and root, and through it somehow shape something, taking what is good from Europe, taking what is good from different other, civilization, cultures, and to somehow wrap it in the African model in order to produce something that will not somehow lead Africa straight into a pit, but shape something that will be helpful. If you see now, because what I see is that many of those models that are being brought into Africa are just copied as they are, without the kind of selection, without the kind of adaptation in order to respond to local need, to local reality. So if this group can also help to, as you did when you were in Nigeria or in Kenya, to go back to the root and to identify what is there to be preserved, what is there to be, as Pope John Paul II said, to really go into enculturation. I think that will be also of a great help. How to enculturate even AI we are talking about, and those Silicon Valley, a big head. How to apply enculturation even in those domains. I don't know. I might be, not straight to the point, but the idea is to somehow bring in what is new, but at the same time join it to what is already there in order to produce something that really responds to local reality.
I think they call it the
Good point.
Ubuntu
Yeah.
model. In Kenya, they call it Ubuntu, which is,
Exactly.
yeah, that's more equality of everybody participating and everybody benefiting. Unfortunately, the colonial model, which the Europe brought to Africa, and the United States has adopted too in many ways, is domination of other cultures. So that we need a new model that's not based upon colonialism or domination, but rather everybody benefiting more equally for the science and technology that's being created for the future. And
We did for the Native American peoples. We smothered their culture, and all the strengths of their culture are still surviving, but they're hard to find.
right. Well, we took over their
Mm-hmm.
lands and exploited them, unfortunately. And unfortunately, our Christianity played a role in that Native American situation. So we have a lot to overcome
There's
in
some
the
lessons
history.
to be learned. Lessons to
Yeah,
be learned from that.
Right.
Yeah.
I-
So we've been
just
going a little over an hour now. Dr. Fevzullah, you were going to say?
just let me chip in a little bit. Everyone, different parts of the world, we have all pluses and we have all lessons from the past, and we have all problems that we are challenging, that we are trying to deal with. So I think based on the past, based on the experiences, and as long as we can engage more diverse people from different walks of life and come together and then work on something that is going to be benefiting everyone, I think it's going to be really great and important and valuable. And in this regard, I think that kind of partnership is going to be really meaningful. We should also think about how it's going to be, because this is just like a small group of people, and we are going to work on the building of more diverse people, more people from Silicon Valley, from Africa, and different leaders from everywhere. So we need to think about the steps and how it's going to be, and how we are going to work, how many sessions and all. I think this is going to materialize more in time. And meanwhile, we should think about like what kind of people we can engage. I think from there in the United States, so in Silicon Valley, so you can have ChatGPT, Amazon, or Google people, including some other people from the universities. From Africa, from Nigeria. Nigeria is very diverse in this regard and is very populous. There is a lot of population. So we can also work by engaging people, but I think it should be not too long and not too short. And then there should be very definitive steps and the points that what we are going to be talking about. Otherwise, it can be so diverse, so big, big or so specific. So we should really think about all these steps and then the formalities.
Well, Dr. Fevzullah, if you and Father Sebastian could be in touch with each other, and maybe Michael, if you'd be willing to be part of that team, the people who are here could be a core group to start. I don't know, Jim, if you'd like to be part of this, but maybe we could come up with an agenda for how do we move forward. We're willing to publish a book on this topic, but maybe we need to decide what would go into that book. And maybe we need more sessions to expand the circle. Maybe if we're trying to create a new platform, that's a big agenda item itself. We're a small group, but I think GMU has been around for 25 years now, and we've had some success in Kenya working on different levels to create an interfaith platform in Kenya. So we're hoping to do something like that with the help of Fevzullah's group in Nigeria. I met a lot of people in Nigeria that are already in touch with each other. You already have built a very nice interface platform in Nigeria. If we could connect what you've already created with Silicon Valley and going forward, maybe that could be a worthwhile objective. I don't know. That's what my hope is, that since we have these connections with these technology companies, that may be a way to move forward, both for Africa and for the technology sector of the world, because a lot of it is being planned right now here in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and I think one of the concrete steps is how do you effectively allocate and distribute and plan effective use of the $1 billion that Google wants to give?
Well, I think we can start with that because that money has already been committed by Google. And so when we meet with the mayor, Google also is committed a whole bunch of money for San Jose. So they're very involved in the development of San Jose. So both there's a, Google is a big player, but ChatGPT is another one that's they're the ones who created the AI platform, which now is being running on many different companies. So how do we move forward in this dialogue? And hopefully we could play some role. So should we reconvene this group We have one more session next week.
Mhm.
How would you suggest, we're going to finish up with Father Sebastian's reflections on the parables, but how do you suggest, we've discussed a lot of ideas. Michael and I are going to meet with the mayor next Monday, Mayor Mahan of San Jose, and hopefully we'll try to interest him in this concept. But should we meet, say, after this class is over, maybe in a month or so?
I
How would you say
believe
we move?
we should have a specific the online meeting for just for the organization, how we should be doing that one. So maybe we can brainstorm on the steps and which people are to be involved and all. So we should just be spending some time, a special session on the organization and how we are going to, because planning is, I think, very important. So if we plan it well, I think it will be more successful.
Okay, so we'll finish up your class next week on the parables, Father Sebastian, and then
Yes.
I'll be in touch with Dr. Fevzullah.
Mhm.
I'm going to provide emails for both of you. And are you both on WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't we plan to meet? And Michael, would you, after we meet with the mayor, would you be part of this group too then in the planning for the working with Nigeria?
I'm definitely willing to help as much as in whatever way I
Okay.
can.
So this will be our little core group, and we'll meet after we meet with the mayor next Monday. Maybe say
Okay.
I'm going to New York. It'll probably be after Easter because I'm going to be away at our daughter's home in New York until the 28th. So let's say the first week of May, which is a
Mhm.
month from now. We'll already have met with the mayor, and we can convene the first, let's say the first Wednesday of May at the
Okay.
same time. Is that good for both of you?
Okay. Yeah.
First
It sounds
Wednesday of May.
Pardon? The
First
first
May.
Wednesday of May. I don't know what date that
First
is.
Wednesday of May.
Yeah. So
This will-
meanwhile, if you want to invite any other people that you think should be part of this group,
Mhm.
so by that time, we will have met with the mayor to see if he's interested in the concept. And I already
Mhm.
have, I can see if any of the people from the technology would be willing to join us. I have the connection with ChatGPT and also with Google. So I'll invite
Okay.
them to see if they would join us.
Okay.
Professor, what do you think about? I will ask Mr. Amra if you think it's a good idea to join us
Oh
at the
yeah,
next meeting.
definitely, definitely. He has all the
Mhm.
connections with the Nigerian
Yeah.
officials. So yeah, I think given the climate with migration right now, it might be best to think of a Zoom conference as a first step, as a planning for that, to involve people
Mhm.
using Zoom, because getting permission to come to the U.S. might be difficult right now with the climate.
Mhm.
It's a lot
Okay.
of technology. You have to get, I mean, a lot of permissions you need to get. Whereas a Zoom, we could do it much more easily
Sure.
Okay.
as a first
All
step.
right. Yeah. Gerald. Yeah, I think about John Remaker that we can
I'll
also
invite John
invite
to
him.
be, yeah, I'll invite John because you and John have worked together, and John has been one of
Exactly.
the key persons in our founding of GMU. He's a
We
board member,
right
and I'll
right.
invite him.
So right now we are writing a book on the impact of colonization in the destruction of some African cultures element. So I think his contribution might also be very, very much helpful.
Fine. I'll invite him to the meeting. And
Okay.
Dr. Azul, you can invite whomever you wish. That'll be the first Wednesday of May, same time.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
also,
Excellent.
Dr. Fevzullah, if you would like to be, if you could, we're looking to have some lectures, I think, on economics and in the religion and science program, we have, we try to combine religion and science. If you want to do something on religion and science from the viewpoint of economic justice, in other words, how do we bring economics more in line with the spiritual principles of Islam and Christianity, just like what we've been talking about today. A couple of lectures on that. So that would be on Friday mornings we have going forward. So if you would like to do that in the future, I can schedule that for you.
Yeah, I would be happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'll write to you on that point with some
All right.
dates.
Sure.
This is like an hour lecture on religion and economic. It's on religion and science, but I think we haven't done anything on religion and economics. You know, the science of economics. How do we impact economic science with religion of Christianity from an Islamic perspective, just like what you were talking about? That would be a good couple of lectures.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm going to send you an email, Gerard, just right after this hour.
So yeah, and then the project with the book, we can also consider that another project that we'd like to do. So you and
okay.
Dr. Fevzullah could work together on that and be in touch with each other, how you want to proceed.
Okay. Thank you.
Then,
I will have to do that.
Thank you very much.
If I can get Father Sebastian's number for communication or email, so that we can communicate on.
You want to give him your number right now, Sebastian?
Yes. That is
chat,
+2.
In the chat, could you put it in the chat?
I'll write in the chat.
You putting it in the chat? Both your email and your WhatsApp number. Then the two of you can be in touch with each other. Jim, I hope you'll participate in the meeting in May, because I'd like to have I think you have something to contribute.
I'm happy to contribute what I can. I just feel that
whatever you think you can.
Thank you. It was a privilege just to be here.
I'll put your email in the chat if you would, please, and your phone number, and I'll include you in the May meeting.
Okay, I just wrote mine.
Okay. Everybody have their contact information now?
Yes, I made a mistake. This is plus. $237. Okay, good. All right. My phone number is there and my email also are there.
Yeah, I've seen it. I have noted your number and email. I have also put my number and email there too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. This has been very fruitful.
You.
This has been recorded. This has been recorded. It'll be up on the GMU YouTube channel. So this has been very helpful.
I just realized I missed 1 or 2 numbers. I have just written it again.
Okay.
Which number?
So can you just update, please, the number?
Whose number are you looking for?
No, I just wrote my number again because I missed 1 or 2 numbers in the
okay.
earlier.
We got it there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've updated now, my number.
Okay. So hopefully, Fevzullah, you and Sebastian can be in touch and start thinking about this book project, what would go into it. And then also you're going to talk with other people to be part of the May session.
All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
And Michael and I will hopefully connect with the mayor next Monday.
We're having one more Wednesday morning session on the parables.
Yeah, next
week?
Wednesday is with, the last one was Sebastian, yeah.
Mhm.
So anybody, you're welcome to join us, Jim, for that last session.
I will try that.
Okay. It'll be the same time. Any
Same
other,
time.
yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise,
Is it-
we'll,
what time is it now in Nigeria right now?
It's 6:25 p.m.
So it's not the middle of the night, at least.
No, no, it's in the evening.
6:25 also in Cameroon.
Okay,
you're in the
good to
same
know that.
time zone in Cameroon as in Nigeria?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, it's
Okay.
6:25 p.m. Same time.
Okay,
Same
thank you
time.
very much.
Thank you very much for the
Okay.
opportunity. It has been lovely.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.